Hi, I'm Bob Myers, one of the Fruitful Congregation Journey leadership team, and I'm glad to have a chance to share a little bit about my faith journey. Who am I? I'm Barb and Ed's son of German and Scottish descent. I'm Stacy's husband and proud father of Savannah and McKenna. But who am I? 5'8", a fair bit overweight, brown hair, blue eyes. But is that sufficient? Is the answer my job or my hobbies? Is it what I say and what I do? Or is it more? What is my core identity? For me, the answer is that I'm a child of God. I'm also a sinner, someone who is broken. But I'm grateful for Jesus Christ, who died for my salvation. This gives me hope. My purpose in life is to know God more completely, to love God more deeply, and to reflect Christ to others through actions and words. I can't remember a time that God wasn't a part of my worldview. Perhaps that's partly attributable to my family. My grandfather was a Methodist minister. It just seems obvious that there's an order in the world that can't be explained otherwise. And there have been particular times when I perceived God to have directly intervened in my life. I don't know what else to call them, but God moments. When I was a teen, I went on a backpacking trip with a youth group to Isle Royale National Park, and I got really sick. On the ferry ride back to Grand Portage, I felt seasick. No way, I thought. I've often fished with Dad on Lake Superior, often in rough conditions. Yet here I was, sick to my stomach. Our group camped out that night in rural Minnesota, and I came down with a fever. 104 degrees, I'm told. There I was, by myself. Everyone else seemed to be afraid of me. Yes, they checked on me, but no one stayed. I was so hot and alone and frankly bored. I began to pass the time, and I started to pray. I talked to God, and I had songs that ran through my head, mostly songs from the church, songs and hymns. And I experienced being warmed in a different way. It was like my sleeping bag snuggled up to me, just as if God was holding me tight. Anyhow, the fever broke by morning. I could see the relief on the youth pastor's face. The other teams came up to me and said they could hear me singing in the night, and they thought I was delusional. To this day, I am convinced that I experienced the comfort of the divine presence that night. And since then, I have even more keenly sought to listen to that still, small voice. Another significant event was meeting my future wife for the first time. While I was working at 2 different college jobs, I would hear college colleagues talk about friends and events. Stacy was mentioned more than once by both Carrie at one job and Jenny at the other. But that fact escaped me until one Sunday morning. Attending worship at a United Methodist Church, I sat in a pew. It was empty except for a young woman at the far end. She was sitting with some folks that I assumed were her parents. As the fellowship pad was passed, I looked down and the name seemed familiar, and I looked across and she seemed to recognize the name too. This moment, frozen in my mind, continues to be more than just an accident. As it turned out, she was living in an apartment right next to my fraternity house. We began as just friends, but deep down, I think we both knew that we were going to share our lives together. I don't believe in fate, but I do believe that God can and does have an impact on the lives of those that seek Him. I think people have an innate ability and a need to connect with their Creator. The irony is that seeking connection does not always seem to be our first inclination. We first strive to thrive independently. before ultimately turning to God. I can relate to the phrase, if you feel far from God, guess who moved? You know, planting trees is something that's meaningful to me. It's one way of leaving a legacy. Trees will probably live many decades more than my life, but they are by no means perpetual. Yet God is and was and always will be. I'd like to be able to say that my relationship with God has been the most important one in my life, but my choices have not always reflected this. But God forgives me and loves me anyway, gently calling me to do better each day. That's the thing about Christianity that's different from other religions. It's not about what we do, but what about God has done and what He will do for you.